Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the DMV Hockey Podcast. I'm Scott Lowe, owner and operator of DMVProspects.com, and I'm here again this week with Coach Joe Vonakis and Mike Chen. Guys, busy week in DMV hockey. What did you do this week, Joe?
This week we had the start of our summer program held here at Reisterstown. We got a chance to work with some of the Stevenson players, obviously with Chen hopping out there, coaching and playing, in addition to some of the other athletes that just got out of school, and we're looking forward to Sunday's game.
Had some big names here this week. We had Jerad Rosburg, Michigan State, going into his 5th year. He redshirted 1 year. He's about to head out to Dallas Stars developmental camp. How did Jerad fit in with the group this week? Kind of pushed the pace a little bit.
Yeah, it was good. He was testing out his new skates, and he got a chance to see kind of what we have going, and was very complimentary of the ice time, and not only the ice time, but the feedback. He got a chance to work with Chen, and he had nothing but good things to say after it in preparation for the NHL camps.
And a shout out to Craig Laughlin for sending Jerad our way as Jerad was prepping for his developmental camp. I think he's going to Calgary as well right after Dallas, so he's got 2 tough weeks. And Locker and I partner on our Chowder Cup team, so he will be on the bench with us July 18th to 21st, coaching our showcase teams at the Chowder Cup. Chenny, coming off a pro camp last week with David Bondra. Mike came out and ran a camp with David Bondra for us. A pro position camp is what we called it. Gave some of the local kids an opportunity to work on forward and defense specific drills, but also to compete against each other. How'd that go?
It was good. So the point of this was just to kind of teach them some fundamentals and tactics that me and David have learned throughout our careers, but not just split it up and do position drills the whole time. We would do whatever the skill we were teaching, then we would bring them together for a drill that implemented the skill. So David worked on line rush tactics with the forwards, I worked on stick positioning, and then we would come together and do a line rush drill, forwards against the Ds, and then we sat down and talked to the parents and the kids about our different types of paths, and if their goal is college, then we kind of told them what we thought about it, and if their goal was major junior, there's a kid here, Bryce Montgomery, who is going to the OHL, and he gave some input too. And it was, I think, one of the biggest things that at least the parents took away is, I mean, me and David, we had fun as kids, but we harped on the education side of it. And the parents said it was always nice to hear someone else besides them telling their kid to focus on the education. So in terms of playing college hockey, it's a little bit more important for education versus if you play college football or basketball, where it's a lot easier to get you in. So we kind of just talked about our different paths and how hard we've worked to get where we are, and just kind of worked with them throughout the whole week.
Yeah, it went really well. I think we had 22, 23 kids out for the camp, and the parents were very complimentary. And just like you mentioned, hockey's an expensive sport, and if kids want to keep playing through juniors into college, certainly education is a way to help ease some of that financial burden once the players get to the college level. We have a great show in store for you this week. Live interviews, in-game interviews with players, coaches, and referees from our Sunday Elite League games last week. We have a wrap-up of those coming up shortly. We also have Jerad Rosburg. We mentioned earlier, Jerad is a Clarksville, Maryland native who is going into his senior season at Michigan State and was here skating this week and is about to head to a couple NHL developmental camps. So Jerad spoke to us for a few minutes and was gracious enough to not only skate and help our kids out here, but also to give us a little bit of his time and let us pick his brain a little bit. We also have an interview with John Lounsbury, who for many years was the coach and GM of the Walpole Express in the EHL, and he has now moved on into the business world. He is a partner in the GelSTX training stick company, as well as a video analysis company called 11 Hockey. So John was a good guest, and we have about a 45-minute interview with him coming up. John has been great to kids in this area, helping them get exposed in New England and giving them great opportunities up there. But let's start off. Let's look at the DMV hockey world with some DMV hockey happenings. As many of you know, the Caps traded Matt Niskanen to the Flyers for Radko Gudas, formerly the hated Radko Gudas. Now everyone on Caps Twitter wants to tell me that he's going to the Hall of Fame and that he's better than Niskanen. So we'll see how that goes. But guys, what do you think about that trade? I mean, for the Caps, they dumped Niskanen had a $5.8 million salary for the next 2 years. To Gudas is $3.35. Gudas is younger, and the Flyers are paying 30% So the Caps really gain almost $4 million in cap space on that trade.
I like the deal for both teams. I'm not a GM by any means, but I think if you can open up cap space during a trade, I think that's awesome. And Gudas is a player that, we've seen against in playoffs, and he plays a gritty style. And, he won't be a top 4 defenseman, I don't think, but he'll be able to play that rough and rowdy game in front of the net and bear down on guys and make it tough for forwards to get in front of the net. So I think it's a win-win for both teams. We get a lot of cap space, and we get a good player in return.
Coach Joe, any thoughts? You played in Philly for a little while. You know what it's like up there.
Oh,
they seem thrilled with the trade, the fans at least.
Yeah, I think the addition of Niskanen for the Flyers is good. He's obviously going to provide some stability. They got a young D-core. But it also is going to work out well for the Caps and adding a little grit on the blue line, but also a guy that can move the puck and play in the dirty areas.
It also allowed the Caps to probably make a little better offer for Carl Hagelin, who they also re-signed this week for 4 years, $11 million. I go back to that Brooks Light contract a few years ago when he was toward the end of his career. He was actually a couple years older than Hagelin. Hagelin's just 30. Lots of energy, lots of speed, great on the PK. Played better production-wise when he got to the Caps than he did earlier in the year with Anaheim and Pittsburgh. Seems like a bargain for the Caps to get him back at that price.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to see Hagelin play his senior night at Michigan, and from there he's been a player I've kept my eye on. He keeps up with the speed of the game. He's getting older, but he's still one of the fastest skaters on the ice. I think that's why Pittsburgh had such a good run the year they won 2 cups in a row, because they had guys like him, Connor Sherry, who just flew around the ice but still battled and had some skill. So I think it's a great signing for the Capitals.
I think if you look at it from kind of the way the game's evolving, it's that speed factor, and the skill of the game has increased so much. When you add a guy like him, it only helps, especially a guy that can play up and down the lineup, but also put up points. It's never bad to have guys with speed. And
when you think about that, Brett Connolly is going to be an unrestricted free agent coming off a career year, 22 goals, 24 assists. Probably going to be out of their price range. Bringing in a guy like Hagelin, I think Cheney's a great play by McClellan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough to choose players. Last year the Caps got lucky with the Orpik buyout of Colorado. We ended up getting him back and signing both him and Wilson. But, some years you just can't have everyone you want with the cap space. And I think we did a good job of dumping some of it with the Niskanen trade and signing Hagelin. And, it's tough because you want both players, but ultimately you have to choose which one's best for your team.
And speaking of Orpik, it seems like Gudas will replace that physical presence. Even though Orpik was only like $1.5 million last year after all the fancy paperwork they pulled off, doesn't seem likely that he'd be back.
Yeah, it's obviously at the tail end of his career. He's gotten a chance to win a couple cups, but to have that veteran presence in the locker room is huge. And I think at this point he's made his money. He's just looking for an opportunity to play, and we'll kind of see how it goes. I was lucky enough to get a chance to speak with his dad down at the coaches convention in Florida, and he said it really is kind of day by day, so we'll see what happens.
And then coming up with free agencies, Devontae Smith-Pelly, another hero from the Caps Stanley Cup run, kind of fell out of favor, wasn't in great shape this year at the beginning of the season, got sent down, then called back up kind of in a pinch at the end. I have to think if he can iron out his differences with the coaching staff, he'll be a bargain. He'll probably be back. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, having a young guy that was a part of success, he's at that point where he's going to become a veteran before you know it. And not only having a young guy that's had that experience, but somebody that can skate, somebody that can shoot the puck, somebody that can play physical up and down the lineup. The first chance I ever got to see him play was in the Nike Bauer tournament in Chicago, where the Team Maryland U16 team only lost 3-1 to the Toronto Nationals at the time. And
do you know anybody who's on that team?
Junior Canadians. Yeah, so it was him, Toffoli, DSP is him, Tyler Toffoli, and then John McFarland. That was the big line, and we actually put up one of the better games in the entire tournament against them. I think it was only a 3-1 loss. And
who'd you have? Who was on your team?
Well, this guy to my left, I actually wasn't playing the game, but this guy to my left, Michael Chen, and then
what year is
David
this?
Bondra.
Is this 16?
This was 16.
Yeah, I remember that game. John McFarland, I don't think he played in the NHL. He was a second-round pick in the NHL, and first overall in the OHL, I believe. He was he was supposed to be the number 1 overall pick in the NHL and just kind of tailored off. But I remember blocking one of his shots, and it was one of the coolest things that I've done to that point in my life.
I'm sure you felt that one, right?
Yeah.
And you look at the Caps, at the landscape overall on the free agent side, probably the saving the money with the trade of Niskanen and then signing Hagelin at a pretty much a bargain rate. Now you don't know what to do with Connolly, but you've still got Vrana and Burakovsky as restricted free agents. Apparently Vrana is pretty far apart with what he wants. So, probably they're going to have to prioritize and to give these younger guys what they want. Either Burakovsky, who's been talked about being traded, he might have to go, or they're going to have to let some of the unrestricted guys go and use some of that money to sign both those guys back. And then you look toward next year, you want to try to keep Backstrom and Holtby, I imagine, if possible. I think you'll get both on a hometown discount, but that's a lot of money you're going to have to save somehow.
Yeah, I think the one thing to focus on is that it is a business, and there's guys that want to make sure that they get their families taken care of. I've seen both sides of it, where coaches that obviously want to put together the best teams, but like friends that I have that have pursued pro hockey, they want to make sure they take care of themselves and their family, and it's about finding that happy medium. And you can't make everybody happy, but at the end of the day, if you can put together a good team and you sacrifice making a couple bucks, it obviously bodes well for the fans. But the big thing is they've had success. These guys are proven. So if they test the open market, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then it's not a bad problem to have such high caliber players and have to choose. It's a tricky situation with the cap again, but it's a problem that GMs don't mind dealing with, because either way they're going to get a good player out of it.
And originally they talked about the cap being about $83 million. It looks like it's going to come in at about 81 and a half. I know that Brian McClellan was very frustrated that he didn't know the exact number going into the draft. So we'll segue into the draft, which is tonight. And McClellan said that they're going to focus on forwards this year. They've drafted a lot of D over the last few years, especially with their high picks, and trying to build that forward depth, knowing that Backstrom and Ovechkin are moving toward the latter parts of their career. You don't know what's going to happen with Burakovsky and Vrana, so they're going to try to add some forward depth. Apparently at the draft this year, they're pretty well stacked in goal at the lower levels. Some guys, Chenny, that you probably know a little bit, with Vanacek and Samsonov, and then Copley as the backup with the NHL team. So McClellan says they're going to draft forward depth. They've got I think the 25th-ish pick in the draft this year. They've done very well getting guys like Kuznetsov later on in the first round, Tom Wilson. Do you think, you guys, Chenny, what do you think about focusing on the forwards this year?
I like it. I think they have a lot of good D in their organization right now in Hershey and especially South Carolina. Just kidding. But I think it takes a little bit longer for D to develop. So, they have guys in Hershey right now that are developing, and I think it's easier for a forward to hop in a lineup and start right away. You have a little bit less responsibility. So I think focusing on the forwards right now is a good idea, since they have such good D in their organization right now who are learning, and a lot more guys like Siegenthaler are getting NHL experience, and they're continuing to get better. So I think the play to draft forwards is a smart one. And they have a good group of older forwards that these younger guys can learn from.
Yeah, I think just to kind of mirror what Chenny just said, there are obviously some good D within the organization. But you look across the board how they've drafted in the past. They've taken a lot of European players. So I think they're probably going to stick with that and continue to kind of keep going to the fountain of youth and see if they can bolster that group of forwards. Looking at
some potential local draft picks over the last few years, we've had some kids like Graham McPhee, who spent a good part of his career, George McPhee's son, here playing with Team Maryland before he went out to Shattuck St. Mary's, get drafted. This year, I think the only person, and I might be missing somebody, so don't kill me on Twitter if I miss somebody, but Dominic Bassi, who was a star, winning some championships in the some high school championships with Gonzaga, also played with Team Maryland. This past year, he went to South Kent, played for Selects Academy, won an 18U national championship there, 1.9 goals against average, 924 save percentage. Great story about Dom. When he was 15, my son Devin played on Team Maryland's 18U team, and we had one goalie on our 18U AAA team, Ben Cal.